longest 30 seconds ever.
Rat, cat, mouse. We are in the house. Welcome back to PowerHouse Fence Show. I've been saving that for weeks, boys. I've had that in the chamber. I don't even know what I just said. Zach Shue with PowerHouse. I'm here with Dan Turbyville.
It's me, Dan.
It's Dan. Poor Dan. I left you guys alone with him for several weeks, and it feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
In a row.
Yeah.
Life happens, man.
It does.
So thanks for holding it down.
Life's happening again right now.
It's what?
Yeah.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
Cool.
So in fact, back. That's why we're recording this episode.
That's right. Life is happening as we speak.
Right.
Thus requiring us to air a recorded episode.
So as you listen to this, we will not be in studio.
We're not live. Welcome to the show. Presented by MFC Manufacturing, Memphis Fence Company, Simpalo, Thornton Fence Consulting Group. I think that's it. The end of the list.
Wait, you covered them all? I wasn't listening.
I did it. I smashed it, man. So we got links rolling down below for those who are watching to Tony's stuff. Always stuff going on.
Should we put a link to like Simpalo or Memphis Fence Company or MFC Manufacturing? Or...
Yes to Simpalo.
Yes to Simpalo?
Oh, well.
Yeah, I need some people to sign up for Simpalo.
Cool.
The developers are trying to chase me down right now.
Nice.
They're coming after us.
We are Dan and Zach and Dan, and we are here. We are not live, as I said previously mentioned. This is a previously recorded episode.
If we're not live, then what are we?
Well, we are currently live, but when they listen, it'll be recorded.
And that's weird. Anyways, so last week.
Are we dead, man?
I don't know. What are you if you're not live?
Get out of here. Let's do let's do something legit.
I tried, and you reeled it back. So last week when I was here alone, Dan Wheeler commented and asked what the biggest mistake people make in commercial fence or the commercial world or something along those lines. And so I kind of touched on that a little bit then, but I wanted to really just do this whole episode about that. And so this will be focused heavily on the general contractor type of the commercial world. We've talked in the past about how there's like multiple variations of that, but that's what we're going to talk about now. And I don't know if we're going to get all the way through it in one episode because this thing got pretty long whenever I was writing it all out. But as normal, this is based on our experience and our opinions. If you have different experience or opinions, please share.
Yeah, yell them at us from wherever you are right now.
Yeah.
Just start yelling.
That's right. You can not call in.
Man, I read some criticism on one of the social media platforms.
I was wondering if you're going to bring this up.
I haven't been on in a while, but I'm just saying it had me fired up. I didn't think that maybe initially a little angry, but I really was just excited to continue to do the show.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing how both positive and quote unquote negative criticism are equally charging. I'm just saying. I get inspired when I met Benji. He was like, oh, "You're made for this, man. You're so good on the show." It's like, yes, I'm gonna keep doing the show. I love the show. Then little negative criticism comes along. You know what? Same reaction.
No one's ever told me I was made for this.
Oh, well, he said something. I might have heard that a little different. So I'm not going to put words in Benji's mouth, but it's something like that.
Should I read the comment?
I was doing a good. I don't know if that's necessary. I'm just saying, we're asking for people's comments, criticism, concerns. What do you think about what we're saying? This is our opinion. Let's hear yours.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, I'm into it.
It was cool.
Love it.
I was excited because we had a hater.
Yeah, cool.
That's what I was excited about.
All right, just read it. We're going to read it.
No. I'm not going to read it.
All right, I'm going to read it.
Okay.
So this person says, salesman making a podcast is hilarious. No, if hilarious.
I think they meant is.
Okay, well, we'll amend that for them. Build the fence yourself, you little boys.
Yeah, the little boys part was the one that got me. And so my response to this was, I don't know, maybe I'm a little spiteful, maybe whatever, but I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to just have an episode that's a video montage of fence that we've installed, us little boys.
Right.
Ourselves.
I thought it was funny because I think the day before I was saying unconnected to the podcast. We should just do some videos of us doing work.
Right.
But yeah.
Anyways, it was pretty cool. I got excited. I was like, yes, we have a hater. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
We're
pretty cool.
making progress.
Of my let's see, 12 years in the fence industry, I've been in the office for about a year and a half.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for the comment, viewer. We appreciate that.
Keep it up, man.
Anyone else
All
viewing,
everybody.
comment, send it. You
Fence
can email
working,
us.
commenting,
Email.
fence hating, all of it. Yeah.
Whatever you
Let's
got.
do it.
All right. So anyways, we're going to talk about some mistakes. And then I think here in the coming weeks, I'd like to talk about the system that we've kind of developed for this general contracting bidding world. And then I'd like to spend some time and go back through previous agendas that I've made for shows and just kind of see what we've missed and maybe have like a recap on some of that. Well, not a recap since we missed it, but I don't know. Circle back to some of that stuff we missed, whatever. So
good luck. You guys have no idea what it is because we never talked about it.
Yeah.
So upcoming, some stuff that you won't have. No, and we're not going to tell you now, but it's coming.
Yeah, I think that's what we committed to give away at Fence Tech was some stuff.
Right, that's right.
Stop by our booth and you'll get some stuff.
We're all about the stuff.
Yeah.
So what have we been reading and listening to? I haven't really been doing anything.
Man, I just been stuck on the Founders podcast. It's really cool.
That's cool. Last week I was sick, man, and it was the best I could do to continue to go to work,
to function. Yeah.
So
yeah, it was the Founders is cool. I like it. I've kind of been stuck there. I've been catching a little bit of other fence industry podcasts here and there. But yeah, the Founders. Oh, wait a minute. I need to bring up just talk about something. I need to find something.
All right. Well, not reading anything in particular. I do have like a morning reading thing. I do a bunch of different meditations and spiritual insight. I'm subscribed to some email threads and also a couple of morning meditation things that I do. But outside of that, I'm not really pursuing any literature, so to speak. I listen to a ton of music. I've been listening to a lot of music. So that's what I've been doing with that.
All right. So this is what I got. I was listening to a podcast. Maybe Dan Wheeler and Matt Charadonna. And this wasn't exactly how it was said, but this is kind of what I got out of it because this is actually the note that I wrote down. So what's the hardest or worst part of your business?
Oh, right. I read this.
Right. So just think about that a second. What is the thing that you struggle with the absolute most? And now think about how much time are you spending trying to fix that? Are you spending any time trying to fix it? And so that's kind of a cool concept because now is it like if it was the worst problem that you face, you would think that you would make it a priority to try to fix it. But I think we're all guilty of that. We're like, oh, whatever this is, it sucks so bad. It's the worst part. But then we do nothing to try to fix it.
So talk to each other about it.
Right. We just complain about it. And so
add energy to the problem.
Right. So anyways,
exacerbate is the word of the day. Exacerbate the problem further by just talking trash.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was a neat concept that I picked up out of that. And it kind of was the point of what they were talking about. But
I read that. You shared that in Teams, I think.
Yeah.
Internally. And I read that and was petrified.
Yeah.
I just stopped and I thought, well, what's weird is I couldn't come up with anything at first.
Mm-hmm.
So and maybe it was me, like, if I come up with anything, then I'm going to be challenged to be honest with what the answer is.
Right.
No, actually, everything's great. I'm not, procrastinating on anything currently. Right. I'm not avoiding doing any kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything's perfect here. No need to work on fixing anything. Exactly. So anyways, thought it was cool. I would, check out the Founders podcast if you kind of like learning stories and history and stuff like that. It's cool.
Yeah. I think honestly, if I were to answer that right now, which I know that wasn't the purpose of it, I'm going to dig into it anyways, just 30 seconds.
Okay.
It might be making use of the resources at my disposal, specifically my team members, employees, and appropriately delegating tasks so that I'm not doing too much. You know, when Dave Gatto was on the show, he said something about if you got a salesman, don't have him out building fence, right? If he's a good salesperson,
right?
And that's kind of the same thing. I think we have within the organization, not only do we have job descriptions or tasks, but we also have people who are good at certain things. And so if we're good at certain things, sorry, you threw me off.
Sorry.
But I have a certain set of tasks and skill set, and so sure, some of the stuff that I am good at, I'm not utilizing that currently, but I have people to do that, and I have been working on that. I have a guy who I call our field supervisor that I've been delegating more of, like, hey, these are the things that I've been doing that I actually really need you to do to free me up to do my job in the office.
So is your struggle letting go of it, or just realizing that you could delegate it?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think that measure of control and trusting, it's like, I mean, I could do it in 30 minutes myself, or what tell you and explain it to you for 15 and then watch you spend an hour doing it. But that may fall into the teach a man to fish category. I don't know.
I think that's
pushing the car, too busy pushing the car to put gas in it, as Dan likes to say, all that.
Yeah.
So I've been really trying to look at that.
Oh, okay. So here's mine.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Who's next?
That's it?
That's it. That's all you get. I'm just kidding. So no, who's next? Who's our next crew leaders?
Yeah, right.
Right. Who's the next guys to go install the fence?
That was a big thing. When we started this show, we were like, where's the next generation of fencemen coming from? And we haven't done anything about that.
Right.
We talked a bit about it at our local chapter with Andrew, was his name, from West Memphis Fence. And I was so excited about how excited. I mean, I was like, oh, he's like, we got to think about the next generation of fencemen, because we're aging out of building fence and moving into management and sales and all that. And now we need to fill the coffers of
who's next
able-bodied individuals. Right. So what are we going to do?
I don't know. So that's my confession of, I don't know if it's not really like the biggest thing that I struggle with, but I think it's my biggest problem.
So
one of them.
I'm not going to say in your defense. That's not what I mean. That's kind of brown nose. I mean, what I mean is what we have been doing collectively as a company is actively working on the culture here to make it an inviting, appealing trade. We've also increased wages. And then we, with the taking some action around uniforms and safety, these are all the things. This is all part of culture, I guess. But, ultimately, just increasing the culture and trying to modernize Memphis Fence Company to be attractive for the next wave of recruits, so to speak.
Yep. So we'll work on that, and we'll report our progress as we go along. And we've got a big list to get to.
Let's get in there.
I did call this part 1 because I already suspect it's going to take 2 episodes. But so before we go, thank you, listeners. Everyone who tunes in, hears us wherever you hear us. Thanks for checking us out. The podcast downloads have been pretty phenomenal here for the past month or 2.
Yes, that's a round of applause for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for giving us some fuel for the fire, whatever you want to say. And
I'm going to run through the next events we're attending. We already offered you to call, comment, whatever. Y'all know to do that. So the next couple events we got going on, it's this coming weekend or next weekend in Tunica. It's the Memphis Tri-State Fence Association annual golf tournament.
This weekend. 17th and
that's next weekend.
And
then we will be at the West Coast Fence Show in booths 516 and 518 Reno, which I heard this thing is busting at the seams, boy.
It is.
They call me on the cell phone. They say, woohoo, boy, howdy, we're down here at the West Coast Fence Show. We're busting at the seams.
Yeah.
Come one, come all.
Indeed it is.
So there's been some discussion or some work. They're trying to figure out expanding the show as a result of such a high turnout.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome, man.
Yep. Oh, there you go. May 17th and 18th.
That is amazing.
Yep. So they're negotiating, expanding the show, adding more booths, adding another, I think he said 10,000 square foot of exhibitor space. And so if you are an exhibitor, you want to have a booth there, then be on the lookout for that expansion. And
Right.
hopefully they get everything squared away and they're able to announce that it is going to happen. But just kind of be on the lookout for that.
So that's September 5th through the 7th in Reno, Nevada. Again, we'll be holding it down at booth 516, 518.
At least that's what it is now.
Right.
If it expands, who knows?
We'll be there. We'll probably have some camera stuff and do a little interviews. If y'all want to get, a little cameo on the show, that'd be a good opportunity to do that.
Yep. Yep, for sure. We did some stuff at the Northeast show. I don't know how much of it has actually like made it out there in the world yet, but we did some stuff. So
we are collecting content everywhere we go. We'd love to see you guys in some of this stuff. All right. So we've been talking about, Dan had an idea. I think it's a great idea. We've been talking about doing a little class, so to speak, or a workshop on plan reading, reading a set of plans, reading the specs. So we're kind of just saying that to put some feelers out to get a response to see what you guys think about that.
Yep. So if you're interested, look us up somewhere on social media, send us an email, give us a phone call, something like that, and kind of just let us know that you'd be interested in doing it. I don't plan to charge for it, right? It's just going to be free, probably like an hour a week for 4 weeks or something. And but it would take a lot of like resources to create, kind of like a curriculum almost, or like a plan of what we're going to do for 4 hours. And so before I go through all of that,
I have a perfect set. That's just the like, good luck reading this set.
Right. Well, I don't think you want to start off with that, right?
Man, wow.
But anyways, I thought maybe see if some people are interested before we go through the trouble of trying to put something together and, nobody shows up.
Cool.
Anyways, might just do it anyhow. So
again, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Simpalo.
Give
us a call,
please. Oh, yep.
We'd love to demo Simpalo for you. It's a software that Dan's worked to create through basically through your experience with reading plan sets.
Yep, and bidding jobs and things like that.
But the Simpalo has been, it's pretty beneficial in pulling up a set of plans, being able to do takeoffs, produce a material list. I've recently started estimating more commercial work there, and it's, super easy for me to get a takeoff together and have that kind of in the chamber and ready to go whenever I need to submit to a supplier, and it's prepared in a nice, neat fashion that the supplier can easily see what I'm asking for, and it's been pretty good. In fact, I haven't had any "what the heck is your material list" saying.
Right.
So that's cool. Wherein when I type it myself, sometimes I oops and reorganize things or forget material thickness or something like that. And,
right.
Easy to do. So,
or worst case, you forget material.
Right. Ooh, so, speaking of the title for the show.
Yeah.
All right. We've been talking about, we add in a little tool time.
Tool time with Dan and Zach.
Do you remember the television show?
I do. Alyssa shared a thing of it the other day.
Should we talk
on Teams?
Whatever.
Yeah. All right. So today, what we have in
Dan
store
the
for
Tool
you,
Man Turbyville.
What we have in store for you is our yard machine. So this is the machine that cruises around the yard and loads and unloads trucks and customers and all of that throughout the course of the day. We use a Kubota R530 articulated wheel loader. It has the same skid plate type attachment on the front end, so you can hook it to all of your normal skid steer attachments.
Right.
Pretty handy. And it's a little big.
It's a little clunky.
Yeah. So I would say if you've got a decent bit of space, it'll make sense. Like it works. But if you're in pretty close quarters over there, you might think about getting something a little smaller.
At one of the yards I worked in, we had a smaller wheel loader, and it's pretty good. But the articulation point on a smaller one, if you have a really heavy load, it'll start to articulate under the load, which doesn't
That's
seem
weird.
safe for the machine or anybody
Or the operator.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the one we have, it'll like when you turn the machine, it doesn't have as much counterweight, and so it'll kind of want to like tip sideways some if you have a heavy load and stuff. So it has its flaws, but the reason that we got that was we had forklifts forever on the yard, and our yard's gravel. It gets roughed. It's not well maintained, if really maintained at all. And so there's like washes out there at times and rough spots and all. And I mean, it just beats the crap out of like a warehouse type of forklift. So I knew I wanted to get something different, and that's just kind of where I landed. We tried it, and it's been working. It's been fun.
For what?
Since probably
2014?
2015 or something like that.
14 or 15. So
Yeah.
nearing 10 years now.
Yeah. Solid machine. It hasn't, I mean, as long as you maintain it and grease it, like it's pretty solid. But I want to say again, tie down your equipment. I saw someone yesterday 2 days ago, something like that, hauling a mini excavator, didn't have a strap, duct tape, nothing
That's
holding
crazy.
that thing down. It
And
was
for
just
us,
sitting on the machine.
TDOT standard
Sitting
or
on the
requirement is 2 straps per piece of equipment.
Well, so DOT requirements are 2 straps per anything, and then 1 every 10 feet. And then your working WLL working load limit has to exceed the weight of whatever you're tying down and all that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
Yeah, there's like DOT rules and regulations about tying down equipment, but at least tie it down. Like put some effort into it, chains and binders.
Chains
Put
and
them on.
binders. They're easy.
3/8 chains and binders. You can tie down all the equipment we use legally, and it's not going anywhere.
Man,
So,
easy. It's easy.
Easy peasy. All right. So how about some Italian?
Bum, bum, bum. It's entered the time for Italian of the week
I
with
got it.
Ilaria.
What is it?
What is it?
Contractor.
Appaltatore.
Oh, get out of here.
Appaltatore.
That's
I don't even know what that
Slay.
means, but I said it.
Appaltatore.
Oh, that's not
Good
that bad.
job.
Good job.
Oh, that is not right. What is she really making us say?
I have no idea. I don't care though.
Okay, we're just
mean,
over here
what?
saying whatever.
I should actually start making you guys say something
Oh,
different.
You should. It'd be
Wait.
Yeah,
fun.
that'd be fun.
So we do that with our little daughter.
Yeah.
Sophie, 2 years old. And so we like intentionally say things the wrong way because we think it's cute when she says them wrong.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like that's what Ilaria is doing to us.
Yes.
All right, you ready to get into it, man?
Yeah, I was about to go way off course.
All right. So the next note just says, let's do it. All right. So I have a list of 5 mistakes. I think we can call these the top 5 mistakes. I don't know, 5 mistakes that I thought of. And I wanted to just kind of share them with the world, right? Whatever that's just worth.
Yeah.
Number 1 mistake.
Before we go any further, are these ones you have personally made? This one particularly?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to hear it in context. I think that's going to be beneficial for me.
Zach,
and our audience.
So now that Zach is working on more of these like GC bids, he's like, hold on, can you teach me while we're doing this show?
Right.
All right.
I don't anticipate dodging all or missing all the pitfalls. So,
Nobody's going to. Everybody's going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah, we know
So-
that. So I don't anticipate that.
All right. So my number 1 that I have on the list, and I don't think these are necessarily in any order. I don't know. Maybe they are.
They're in order. They're in 1 through 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not ranked, just order.
I don't know. It maybe is ranked. But anyways, number 1, thinking you're going to have all the information you need or want when you sit down to bid a job or after you even sell a job. I hate to break it to you, but you're probably not going to have the information that is even required a lot of times. Okay.
I hear a lot of times about the necessity of doing a site visit, which is humorous considering sometimes the sites don't exist yet.
Yeah. So the necessity of doing a site visit is really big in like the business to business world.
Right.
You for sure have to go look at that. In this GC world, we're definitely going to do a site visit before we send a crew out there.
Right. That's right.
Because when a contractor calls and says, "Hey, we're ready for you," you might go out there and there's like 48 dump truckloads of dirt in the fence line, and
So
they just want you there.
man, I complain about plan sets and the lack of information. Even there's a specific contractor I bid to frequently that just doesn't answer RFIs.
Yeah, not at all. So my story I can tell you. This has probably happened maybe 18 months ago, something like that, 2 years ago. I have no idea why I did it. I don't know what the job was. I don't know who the contractor was. I don't remember anything.
That's probably good for the show. Sake of the show.
All right. What I do remember is I was looking at this set of plans and I just got frustrated. And I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. And so, I mean, I just like, I don't want to say that I like tore it apart, right? But I mean, I went through there and I was like, hey, what do you want? Because I mean, it was contradicted itself all over the place. The details were all different. The specs were all different. I mean, there was like, the site plans sometimes have notes on them about the type of fence that varies between architectural and civil landscaping, all of that.
That's
the
right.
location might vary. So I went through a job, and for some reason, I felt it necessary to spend a lot of time. I want to say I spent like a couple hours doing this, and I prepared this big old RFI, sent it over to one of the GCs, or maybe the GC that had asked me for a price or something like that. Sent it to him, and I was like, "Hey, here's my questions." And then I sat and I waited and waited and
bid what's on the plans.
Cue some cricket noise over there, Ilaria. Yeah. So a couple days before bid day, I sent him an email, and this had been like 2 weeks. And so I sent him an email. I was like, "Hey, man, hadn't heard anything. What's going on?" And he replied and said, "Oh, just bid whatever you think." You freaking people. And so again, couple hours worth of RFI, sat around and waited for 2 weeks, got absolutely nothing.
It's crazy though, because you can't just determine that that's the way it is and do that every time.
Nope.
Because some people respond.
Yep.
And there are certain circumstances where we have communication with the architect to refine the specs.
Yep.
So it's pretty wild, man.
I have relationships with some architects, and I work with them designing a project long before it ever even goes out to bid.
Right.
So I mean, it's just all over the place. Like I sometimes help people generate standards for facilities and things like that. And I mean,
I want it to be the same way every time.
It's not. Not.
I want it to be the same way every time.
Well, all I can say is go stand on an assembly line and put the same bolt in, sir, because in this business, it ain't always the
Did
same
I ever tell you guys that I worked at the Hershey factory?
No.
I don't want to work there ever again.
Okay.
So.
All right.
One day I stood and I put Twizzlers from right here to right here. From one side of my body to the other side of my body. And that was the whole day of work.
But the conveyor belt was broke or something?
Yeah, it was like offloading them onto a cart or something. I don't remember the purpose.
No, I couldn't do it. I can't.
No, I did it. I think that was the day I left. That was it. I was like, no, this ain't gonna work for me.
So
yeah,
don't give up hope on RFIs, because sometimes they'll happen. Sometimes you'll get responses. Sometimes people put in the effort to make sure. Sometimes you get a set of plans that is extremely thorough.
True.
And sometimes there are plans specifically for the fence. They have great details. They have great specs. They have tons of information on them. Sometimes you get crap. And it's just anywhere in between. So don't assume that you're always going to have the information that you need or the information that you want. So what I do is, I mean, I just kind of do the best I can.
Right. And then spell out what it is that you bid on the proposal.
Yep.
So if you interpret it to be a 3-rail fence, then put 3 rails. Yep. Well, in my circumstance, or you were talking about the tennis court yesterday as an example. And this actually happened. We had a request to bid. It was like 4-inch line posts with top, mid, and bottom rail on 4-foot tall fence.
Well,
chain link fence.
Well, a tennis court. Right. So, well, I don't know about your scenario, but I'll see stuff like that on tennis courts sometimes. But the tennis court will have maybe 10-foot tall, 6-foot tall, and 4-foot tall fence, but it only has one, detail or one spec section, and it doesn't tell you what height of fence it's for.
Right.
And so sometimes I just use my judgment. And I'm like,
Well, and I think there is that circumstance that they are relying on us as the professional of the trade to supply them with what they need, not with what's on the drawing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's just kind of how I look at it. So here's one.
Oh, we talked about this earlier.
That you're going to like. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
All right. So you got a job that you're bidding that has a bunch of gates on it, right? And they say put panic bars on these gates. Yeah. Okay. All right. So they don't tell you to put closers or expanded metal on the gates. So what do? Right? Do you include it because you know that it's required for that gate to actually function as the way that they want it to function, I guess? Or do you leave it off because they didn't ask for it and hope that you're going to get
painted into the corner of having to supply what's on the plan set?
Well, you supply what's on the plans and the specs, but it wasn't on there.
Right.
So now you turn in a change order and you're like, well, you didn't include it in the plans. Here's a change order. Honestly, it's kind of a tricky thing. I do not like that approach. I like to give people a price on something that's actually going to work, that will serve the purpose that they want. But the challenge of it is if there's 3 other people bidding on this job, what are they going to do? Right. And that's the fear that we all have is what's everybody else going to do?
Right.
And so I think the best way to handle that situation is to give them a price per plans and specs and then say, hey, those gates with panic bars, you might want to put expanded metal and you might want to put closers on them. And that's going to add X amount of money to the project to do it, or per gate or whatever,
Oh,
so I think in your scenario, it was just kind of unclear as to how many of the gates had like certain hardware on it and stuff like that. And so I think kind of what we settled on there was just give them a price per gate to add that hardware on it.
Right.
So that also works. You just gotta work through it the best you can. And there's not an ideal way to do that, really. There's not like rules, right? There's not and nothing is written in stone that says when you hit this situation, this is what you do.
Right.
I use the phrase judgment call a lot, and I realized that today. But I mean, a lot of the stuff you are just kind of making judgment calls, or we are anyways. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there that can tell me the rules that we don't know. If so, let me know. Anyways, schedule, right? We've talked about schedules some. Sometimes you get a schedule when the job is bidding. Sometimes you don't. You might think, hey, this job's going to take 2 years or this job's going to take 2 months. And then it might be the inverse of that.
Right.
And you just get shocked. You might sell a job and then realize that you have to work on the weekends 24 hours a day and run multiple shifts because they're shutting down roads for it. Now, that was 100% the fault of the person that did the takeoff on that job. But anyways, we did a job and we kind of like got close to when it was time to go. And they're like, oh, yeah. And it was like some conversation. And it's like, wait, what? Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. We're shutting down the interstate for the weekend. So you got to work 24-hour days when the interstate shut down. And that's the only opportunity you have to work. And so we kind of had to like scramble around and figure out how to make that happen. But yeah, that's the details, right? So we've talked about Claiborne on the show, our new estimator. I preached to him a lot about details.
I'm going to go get him. I'm just going to drag him in.
Talk to him a lot about details. And I'm like, hey, the little details are what matters, right? And I mean, there's information in those plans and specs that are important that do not say fence. So anyways, yeah, there's plenty of jobs out there that have incomplete details, incomplete specs, no specs, all the specs. All right. Sometimes you see specs for everything and you're like, all right, do you want top tension wire? Do you want top rail? You want bottom tension wire? You want bottom rail? Like, what do you want?
Right. This next one's good.
It's good.
Sometimes we're given a piece of the plan set that doesn't show the whole picture. I can't remember what job it was, and they keep saying, "Look at LL 101 and be like, oh, well, I only have LL 102. That's all I was ever given.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then you run into that, like after we have a
Does
contract on the
say.
job. And
No, this is while we're performing work. And
Yeah,
I'm like, how do we execute this section of fence? And they're like, well, turn to this page. I'm like, y'all didn't give me that page.
right. Uh-huh. So we bid a job the other day that the contractor sent one sheet. And so we looked at it and we're like, what are we supposed to even be doing here? And so we kind of like dug into that one sheet, and well, there wasn't much digging because it was only one, but we kind of started looking through that one sheet and we're like, all right, here's all the questions. And then they sent an email with like 2 or 3 more. And then I think some more questions, and they sent another email with like 2 or 3 more. I'm like, what? Just send me the whole thing. Like, why aren't we playing this game? Give me the whole plan set. And I mean, we never received any specs on that job. We just bid it based on like what we thought should be around these pickleball courts or whatever.
We can't be the only like cowboys that are just out here bidding wildly on some. I mean, not everything we do is like that, but some of the stuff we do is pretty much we just kind of make it up.
Yeah, I mean,
some stuff.
There's yeah, okay, yeah.
There's some.
That makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you know, when you're the person that has to write the checks, it makes you super uncomfortable, but it is part of playing the game. Sometimes you either got to decide you're going to be a cowboy or you're not going to bid it.
Right.
And that's the choice. And hopefully you're riding the right bull. I don't know. whatever.
Yeah. Tied in tight, or I don't know how you where that analogy goes.
Right. But yeah, it is kind of cowboy style sometimes. But that's kind of one of those things. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that cowboy stuff like we do, you know?
Right.
So definitely do your due diligence. Spend time, look through the plans, look through the specs, send in RFIs. If they don't give you an answer, I kind of just revert back to like what I think is industry standard for our area. And I'm like, all right, if this is a tennis court, we've used that example, and I'm putting top, middle, and bottom rail. I'm probably not going to put that on the 4-foot tall fence. Right? That's just ridiculous. I'll put top and bottom on 4-foot tall. I'm not putting middle rail. And
so some of these nationwide jobs we're bidding are going to have a new area standard, I guess.
Yeah, we're making new standards for them. We're bringing our standards with us.
This is how we do it, where we're from.
Uh-huh.
Let's go.
All right.
Ooh,
so
numbers. Yeah.
Number 2 mistake. Know your numbers. Man, I think I kind of got on a little soapbox about this. I don't know, within the past month or 2 or something, but you got to know your numbers. Before you go in and start trying to bid or sell these big, cool commercial jobs, right? You need to make sure that you're going to make money doing it. And that comes by way of knowing your numbers and understanding your business and having some bit of financial knowledge or understanding and all of that kind of stuff, right? So you need some stuff to calculate a sales price. Okay, so labor, material,
easy.
Yeah. Those are, well, the material thing is kind of ties back into topic number 1 there of getting the information. Right. If you don't have all the information, it can be tricky to come up with a material or labor cost, either one. But then know your flipping overhead. You like that?
Yeah.
That's actually in the agenda.
So proud.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Good job, boss.
So you're going to need your overhead to calculate your margins or your gross profit. And it really terrifies me just to think that people are bidding jobs without knowing that. So if you've been doing it, you've been trucking along, you might want to like bump that up the priority list a little bit to get some financial stuff going and get it in place. Again, are you making money on the jobs that you're doing? Right. And so we can get a little deeper into that with like job costing and stuff like that. I always tell people I can go broke sitting at home. Right. I ain't trying to come work and go broke too. So,
yeah.
So I would think kind of the first phase, as we've talked about before, is like get to an overhead number. right? And then from there, let's really kind of like get further and further and get into doing some decent job costing and stuff like that. You can do it in Excel. So you could build an Excel spreadsheet and just kind of like track all of your cost and everything in there. It's more time consuming, right? You're pushing the car instead of putting gas in it, I think. But at least if you start there, you can like, get an idea of what's going on, and then you can start implementing some kind of accounting software like QuickBooks or something like that. And that'll help make it a little faster, and you can automate some parts of it and things like that. And then you have access to information all the time. All right. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh crap, you can just get on QuickBooks, right?
Right.
And you can see it right then.
Yep.
But anyways, that's going to help you bid correctly while you're moving forward. So, I don't know. Okay. One thing that I think about too, whenever I bid some of these jobs, sorry for that random pause there, people. One thing I think about is if a job's going to take 6 months to do, I try to think about how much money could we make doing however many smaller jobs that we typically would do during that 6-month period.
Exactly.
So if we go out and we're going to bid a 10,000 foot job, it's not going to take 6 months. But I mean, if we're going to bid a 10,000 foot job, then I would expect that we would kind of like maintain our same margins in that 10,000 foot job, or at least be close. Now, I think the flip side of it is you're not outselling a bunch of little jobs. And it does cost money to go run sales calls and to create estimates and all of that stuff. Like, you're spending time and money on it. So that kind of goes into the equation a little bit, but just wanted to throw it out and give you something to kind of chew on, think about, something to take into account when you start running up against these bigger jobs. You ready?
Yeah, I'm
you
waiting.
good? We got number 3 right here. You ready for it?
I'm anxiously awaiting number 3, sir.
Oh, I didn't give a story with number 2 mistake.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, so here, I can give you a story. This story's been talked about before, but here we are again. So when I bought Memphis Fence Company in 2013, we spent maybe about, 6 months or so kind of like preparing for that day and preparing for when I was going to like buy it, right? And I said the same thing twice. And during that preparation, it was like, all right, well, let's look at old financials and try to see what's going on and all of that stuff. And it was painful. There was an old like AS400 accounting system that was in place that wasn't really used. And there was annual financial statements prepared by a CPA, and they would come over here and like sift through stuff for weeks trying to prepare that thing. And that was it. Like, if you wanted to know how much money was in the bank, you went and you found the notepad that had all of the, it would have like a total for deposits for a day and a total for a check run. And that was kind of like, I mean, it was like an old school check register, I guess, is what used to come in the checkbooks. And so that's what was here. And I was like, oh no, this is not going to work. How do you know if you're making money at anything?
Right.
Right.
Because I got money in the bank.
That's it. That's all they were doing. They're like, oh, there's money in the bank. We must be doing good. I'm like, I mean, at this point, I'm far less experienced than I am today. And even then, I was able to say, I don't think it works like that. Like, I think you need to be able to see something.
Right.
And so we explored a couple different routes. We landed on QuickBooks, and day one, operating under the new company, we had QuickBooks in place, and it took us a long time. I don't even know that we really have mastered it at this point, but it took us a long time to kind of like get all of that sorted out and get it the way that we want it. And I'm liable to change something tomorrow and be like, hey, now we're going to do it this way. But once you get in there and kind of figure out how it works and figure out some accounting basics, and then I think, this is the information I want out of it. So like, what does the process need to be to get that information out at the end?
Right.
And so that's kind of the motivation for my changes. But anyways, there's my story. It was terrifying. Like, there was an account balance, and that was pretty much all that was here. So now on to mistake number 3. Number 3 is not understanding how billing and cash flow works with general contractor jobs. And this is where I would like to say again, I'm not sure that these are necessarily in order. Like number 1, I don't know is the most important, right? This one may be the most important, but we've done a whole episode on this. In fact, we've done episodes about like deposits and stuff that kind of was all tied into this. But anyways, when you go to bill a job, just remember you're billing around the 20th or the 25th of the month, and you're going to wait something like 45 or 50 days typically. As with most things, there are exceptions to that. Sometimes you get paid faster, sometimes you get paid slower. But that's kind of how you do it in the general contractor world. So you need to understand that. Um, there's specific forms that they're going to have you fill out and use to bill, and waivers that you'll have to sign, and all this stuff should be included in the contract. If not, then you could ask them and they'll probably give you what you need there. But think about this from like your resources standpoint, right? So your money in the bank, your people available, whatever you want to think about, that's all your resources, right? Your installers, your money, everything. So if we go out and bid 10 jobs, right? So let's say we at Memphis Fence Company went out and we saw these 10 beautiful, massive jobs that were super exciting. We bid all 10 of them and we sold 5. And then a step further, all 5 of them happened at the same time.
Right.
Right. And so now we have to finance 5 of these big jobs all at once. And so that financing them is one piece of it. But then we would have to
Actually
scramble around
performing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we got to like try to figure out how to get pretty creative and how are we going to actually get this done? So that's definitely something to think about, right?
I think I've painted myself into that corner in the iron shop on a couple of occasions.
It
And-
happens a lot.
And it works. It works out. It has worked out, but the customers, what it is it's actually doing a disservice to the customer. You know, because we're inefficient and the jobs end up taking longer than they should because we're trying to juggle 3 jobs instead of just scheduling them at one after the other. But when they're sold and they want them and that's the window you have to do the work in, then that's when you do the work, right?
Yeah, because they're just going to call you and say, hey, we're going to be ready for you in whatever amount of time, 3 weeks,
Right.
a month, something like that.
So,
and it's just kind of like, okay, yep, we'll be there. And then you hang up the phone and you go cry in the corner because you have no idea how it's going to happen.
we're already somewhere else.
You know who else we do a disservice to by putting ourselves in that situation?
Our employees?
My heart. Right?
Yeah.
All that freaking dealing with that and like the burden of knowing that there's all of this stuff looming and one misstep is going to just like send us spiraling into massive chaos. That's but that's where we live, man. That's what we live for. It makes absolutely no sense. Like that's how I want to be. I want to be like just on this side of that line.
Right.
And if we mess up one little thing, we're going to fall off the cliff. But that's where I want to live.
It's pretty mellow around here for this time of year right now.
Yeah.
And so I can sense there's a bit, everyone's got a little bit of like antsiness of like, we're not like about to go insane.
Right.
Trying.
Right. We're just doing jobs. Like, why are we not freaking out right now?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is strange how in that scenario, you sold 5 jobs. All 5 of them, for some reason, seem to happen at similar times or close.
Same time.
Yeah. And so we do find ourselves in that situation. And I mean, we've talked about schedules and stuff like that. If you've got some jobs that are sold, you can kind of look at schedules on some of the jobs that are bidding.
A good point that if it's not in the plans, obviously you don't get it when you're bidding, but maybe you could. I mean, because we just attended a pre-bid meeting and they told us the window, which was kind of cool because it was like, that's a pretty tight window.
Yeah.
So to know that prior to bidding and accepting the job,
Yeah,
good.
They gave you 30 days to do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we're just doing the fence, no big deal. But if we're going to have to coordinate with subcontractors, then that could be pretty tight, But you want a little chaos, I'll go get you some.
Yeah, there's some chaos waiting right
there.
So, with that job, how much of a window do they give you to plan? Or is it just like from the time we sign the contract, you've got 30 days?
They said the soonest you could start is May 28th. And the job has to be completed by June 28th. So that's a maybe you can start this date.
And when are they going to award the job?
I have no idea.
Right? What's the lead time on the material?
I don't know, man.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm asking all those complicated questions.
We haven't gotten into that yet. We're still waiting on RFIs on all this stuff. So,
all right, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. I don't know how you overcome that, right? Because I've done it before, and I've told. We talked about this job before you came back here.
You called me, I think.
Yeah,
and asked me like, how long do you think you could do this in?
Right. Because they wanted this. I mean, it was something like 4,000 or 5,000 feet of custom built ornamental fence, and they wanted it done in like 90 days.
Right.
From the time they awarded it.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, what? And so that's when they told me that they wanted to award me the contract, before I just said no, I called a few people. Zach was one of them. And I was like, do you think that this is like at all even remotely possible if like 3 or 4 of us team up all together to try to do this? And the answer we landed on was no.
It's going to take all of the fence guys that we have a relationship with.
Right. And
all the fabricators we know.
And sometimes they have other things going on.
Right.
And so you get into that thing where it's like,
dude. And at that time I was hungry. I was hungry to do that. I would have loved to take that job and just fabricate 24 hours a day. But I was like, I can't.
Right.
I mean, it's not humanly possible for me to do that.
Yep. Yeah, no. And it was a cool job.
But man,
fairly high profile place and all that stuff. And
it stinks too, being a small business and seeing that big chunk of whatever, that piece of the pie, and then have to say no because know that like really you just don't have the resources to do it.
Or
Thank God I didn't say yes.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for not saying yes, and like let's put ourselves in that position, right? But no, and it's hard, man. That's hard to sit there and be like, hey, you want to send me a contract for this job? Sorry, no, I can't do it.
Right.
It's hard to tell people no, for sure. But
especially when we're out here chasing big. I mean, everybody does. I'm assuming everyone has projections and like, what is our target sales for the year? And a moment like this where we're like, we haven't sold anything in a little while. We would like to sell something. And then that comes along and it's like, that's where these mistakes come. It's because you're like, shit, we need to sell a job.
Yep.
So it comes, the offer is there. You say yes.
Yep. So I've turned down things like that. That's an example of a job that I've turned down. I think at that same time, I believe there was another job that I turned down like within a few days of it, just because it was the same thing. The timeline was unrealistic or something like that. And I'm just honest. And I just told him like, hey, sorry, we can't do it. And I mean, I explained to them, I called around, I tried to like build up a dream team of people to even put together to try to get it done for you in the time that you want. And I don't even think if we all collectively worked on it, we could make it happen.
Right.
But yeah, no, it sucks because you get hungry and they're like, oh, hey, you want this steak? Yes, I do actually. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie to you. And we have been extremely blessed. And even with turning down periodic jobs like that, because it's not feasible, we've still been able to like keep working.
Yeah.
And so that's where the the blessed part of it comes from is that we still didn't run out of work, even though we were turning down jobs. Now we may happen tomorrow, but so far
we've talked a little bit about the scheduling aspect of this, if you get all 5 at once or whatever, but we have, there's the financial side of this piece where you're financially responsible, and for tight cash flow in these circumstances when you have to wait 45, 50 days to get paid. One of the things you can do is bill for stored materials.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So let's use that same job as an example, right? So think about Memphis Fence Company. Had I committed to do that job, hired you and 2 or 3 or 4 other people to fabricate fence, y'all are going to expect to be paid.
Right. I definitely was going to want to get paid.
Right. You're going to be like, hey, I've worked a week. Here's my bill.
Right.
And I mean, that's just how it works. I'm familiar with the process.
That's true. But well, personally, I was in a position to wait 30 days. I would have expected you to ship me material, though.
So
I would either pay me to buy the material or send me the material.
So I buy all the material.
Right.
And I distribute the material among the 3 or 4 or 5 people, whatever that is. And then I get 3 or 4 or 5 people start hitting me for bills.
Right.
And at that point, like I could have billed for stored materials that month. And then I'm going to have to wait 45 days. And then the following month, I could start billing for production, but I'm still waiting 45 days.
Right.
And so there's at least 45. I'm going to say realistically, you're more in like a 60-ish day window that you're just forking out money, waiting on it to come back. And so there you go. That's a good example of how you can get yourself kind of in a pickle with the cash flow stuff. Is you start having to do stuff like that and people are walking around or, coming to you wanting to be paid, which you agreed to pay them.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like it's a surprise, but you frequently have to pay subcontractors, vendors, suppliers, all of that before you get paid. And so just kind of keep that in mind.
So we also have their option to bill for mobilization.
Yeah. So can we touch on the stored materials a little bit there? You mentioned it, but I'd leapfrog back up to the top there. So the stored materials thing is great. You can bill for the stored materials, but just keep in mind, if you have, even if you have 30-day terms with the supplier and it takes you 45 days to get paid from the contractor, and let's say the material hits the same day that you billed for the stored materials, which is probably not going to happen, but because you need to like send in pictures and have insurance coverage for property of others and all of that kind of stuff. So let's just say the planets aligned. You submitted a bill on the day the material landed, which put you into that 45-day cycle. Well, guess what? You still got to pay that bill in 30 days, right? And then 45 days down the road, you're going to get money back. So suppliers will work with you some, right? You can get in those situations where your suppliers will work with you and, kind of let you ride it out for a minute. And so it's possible to do, but you just got to have a plan. And then to your points, a lot of times, sometimes you have to show proof of paying for the material when you send in the bill for the material.
Right.
There's one particular place here in town that we work at a decent bit, and that's the way that their stuff is set up. You want to bill for stored materials? Sure. Send me your check stub showing me that you've paid for it.
Right.
Send me the invoices for the material so I can know that your check matches, and then send me this waiver from the supplier that says you've paid. So you have to have paid, and the check has to have hit their account for them to sign that. And, I've been through that cycle on that certain property there for, 6-figure material bills. And I'm like, hey, y'all want to give me some money? And they're like, no, not until you do all of these things, and so it can get a little interesting, but yeah. So now mobilization. Sorry about that, sir. Did you want to talk about the mobilization?
No,
we
don't do it much.
No. So Cannon commented and mentioned this mobilization stuff last week, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. You remember whenever we did the episode about like deposits?
Yep.
All right. So when I was calling around asking people if they would pay deposits, we talked about mobilization, or I talked about mobilization to a couple of them. And one of the guys just straight up told me, he said, I'm not paying a fence company mobilization.
Right.
That was where, I mean, that was all he really wanted to say about it. And I was like, okay. He said, look, if you're a dirt contractor and you've got to move 10 pieces of equipment to a job site and it takes you 3 days to move the equipment, that's a mobilization.
Right. Not just getting in the truck and driving here.
Right. He said, when you're a fence guy, you put your material on the back of the truck and you drive out there. That's not a mobilization. That's what you do every day.
Right.
You plan to do that when you bid the job. It's built into the cost of the job. Don't give me that mobilization crap.
Right.
Now, I think that with him specifically, if we were doing a job that was like a couple hours away and we had to, travel there and we had to get hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff, I think for that, it would be a different situation.
Big time.
But some contractors would probably let you do a little mobilization to just kind of front load that job a bit so you can kind of start the cash flow a little sooner. But just if you plan to do it, talk to them about it and make sure they're cool with it. And then deposits. So as previously mentioned,
that one makes me tired.
We did a whole episode talking about deposits. So that's not.
We talked about it a little bit every single episode.
No. Well, that's just because that was the last time you were here.
Well, I'm saying we've talked about it a good bit.
Yeah. Yep. So there's some situations where you could get a deposit. From what I understand, there has to be a really good reason. Like you're significantly cheaper than somebody else. Your supplier requires that you pay for the material before they'll ship it. Some things like that can kind of get the owner to agree to doing a deposit. But what I think I talked to like 4 or 5 different people, and they basically, all of them had a very similar story, and it was mainly no, but there are some situations where they would do it.
Right.
And one of those situations was if you were 20% lower than the next fence guy, like, first of all, they're going to try to figure out why. And if they would even be willing to award a contract to you with that much savings, with that much lower of a price,
right,
then they may be willing to pay a deposit if they're saving a bunch of money. But anyways,
so a lot of this stuff, these things, there's plenty of episodes that are titled. We got one about the cash flow called Cash is King.
Yeah, man.
I don't remember the one that has the deposits. I don't remember the title.
I think it was like deposits and financing jobs or something like that.
Right. So we've talked a good bit about most of this stuff. It's back in the recesses of the podcast, previous episode. So if you're interested in any more of this, we talk about this a good bit, or have been. And let's move on to, you want to hit 4 before we call it?
No, I thought we'd save 4 and 5 for the next one.
Sounds good. We got to have more episodes.
We're an hour in. So kind of to Zach's point about us having talked about some of this stuff, any of you new listeners out there, I would maybe encourage you or something like that. You can scroll back through our episodes and see where we've talked a lot about a lot of this stuff. And that also goes back to, please tell us what you want us to talk about, because it's hard to come up with a new topic every week.
Right. That's right.
So just scroll back, see if there's some stuff that we've already touched on that kind of ties back into this. But anyways, so now that is 3 mistakes down, and I have 2 more, might come up with the 6th one. So we'll have 3 more to talk about next time. You got any fun closing stuff?
No, I exhausted all that at the beginning.
All right.
Well, thank you guys as usual. Thank you guys for joining us. We do this for you, really. I mean, we have these kind of conversations in here all the time, but to do it in this setting and as a podcast, it all came from the idea that maybe someone else might want to be entertained by, or hopefully learn from our experience to some extent.
Yep.
If you have any specific questions, either of us will be glad to respond to that or reach out to you to talk about further about that, or anything. I mean, realistically, I'd be open to answer any question that anyone has for me about anything, to be honest.
Short of talking about prices.
Well,
we're going to stay away from the whole collusion stuff, but
right. Short of pricing, I mean, I'd be willing to disclose anything personally or professionally for any person who called and asked, or reached out via social media. So,
yep.
That
sure.
invitation stands. Again, I'm Zach Shue, Dan Turbyville. And thanks for Eladia behind the scenes there.
Of course.
Not only does she do our Italian word of the week, she holds it down as our producer here. And I think that's about it, man. Thank you guys. It's been great to be back after having been on a 2-week. That's it.
A 2-week hiatus. Yeah. We missed you. It's really hard to just sit here and talk.
Well, good thing we're saying goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.